It appears to be a sedition season on the Indian subcontinent, a relic of the colonial era. The sedition law has become a potent weapon in the hands of Pakistani and Indian governments to crush dissenting voices. In December 2019, Pakistan's government charged hundreds of people with sedition for taking part in the countrywide Students' Solidarity March, which called for the restoration of student unions among other demands. One of the participants in the march, Alamgir Wazir, was arrested on December 2 and has since been languishing in jail for allegedly conspiring to overthrow the government. On January 27, Manzoor Pashtun, the leader of Pashtun Tahfuz movement (PTM), was also arrested on charges of sedition in the late night raid on his residence in Peshawar. A day later, police arrested and charged with sedition 23 other people, including several young activists from the left-wing Awami Workers Party (AWP) for attending a protest in Islamabad against Pashtun's arrest. The PTM is an ethnic Pashtun rights movement that has been calling for accountability for alleged rights abuses committed by Pakistan's military in its war against the Pakistan Taliban. The peaceful rights movement has been the target of a sustained campaign of intimidation and arrest since its formation. Activists from AWP and many of PTM's supporters have been released, but scores of activists remain incarcerated, including Pashtun himself. These individuals face the risk of spending years behind bars merely for daring to criticize the actions of the government. Their ordeal demonstrates the Pakistani state's eagerness to use a sedition law to silence anyone it perceives as a threat to its authority. Across the border in India, the sedition law was notoriously invoked against Jawaharlal Nehru University student leaders Kanhaiya Kumar and Umar Khalid in 2016 for allegedly shouting anti-India slogans during a protest. JNU has a reputation for being a hotbed of left-wing dissent. As a result, India's Hindu nationalist BJP government believes the institution presents an obstacle to its authoritarian agenda and continuously harasses its faculty and students with frivolous lawsuits. Earlier this month, a researcher at JNU, Sharjeel Imam, was charged with sedition for participating in the ongoing protests against Citizenship Amendment Act. In recent years, the sedition law has been used against a host of other people, including trade unions, environmentalists, and professors across the country. What is particularly remarkable about all this is that these unfounded accusations are being hurled through a law which was created and widely used by the British Raj against the insurgent anti-colonial movement in India. Bal Gangadhar Tilak, one of the most prominent nationalist leaders of the colonial India before Gandhi's emergency on the national stage, was tried several times under the sedition law for inciting the public through his writings. In his 1916 trial, he was defended by the young barrister Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who would later go on to become a major proponent of the partition of India and founding father of the state of Pakistan. From 1920s to 1940s, scores of Indians were tried under the sedition law, including Mahatma Gandhi, Maulana Muhammad Ali Jawhar, Bhagat Singh and Aman Roy, among others. Prior to independence, the sedition law was synonymous with the absurdity of colonial rules, as British officials used this law to accuse locals of being foreign agents in their own lands. Independence activists across the subcontinent who were imprisoned for sedition carried the charge as a badge of honor. They were viewed by the general public as heroes because back then being patriotic meant dissenting from those in power. Yet at their birth, the nation states of India and Pakistan were confronted with the paradox of acquiring the twin inheritance of anti-colonial politics premised on popular sovereignty and a colonial state apparatus that was geared towards silencing and terrorizing the population. The gap between these two legacies continues to haunt both countries to this day. The sedition law is a reminder that the colonial logic, which sees the state not as a body that is designed to serve the people but a weapon to subdue them, is alive and well today. One of the most remarkable features of this latest round of repression has been the emphasis on sedition speech. Today, in neither Pakistan nor India is it necessary to prove that there was in place a plan of action to undermine national sovereignty to charge someone with sedition. Instead, speeches and slogans alone are considered proof of some deeper conspiracy against the nation. The states are using sedition law to violently patrol the boundaries of acceptable speech and thought in the public sphere, exposing the vulnerability they feel in the face of righteous and peaceful criticisms of their divisive and dangerous politics and dangerous policies. This sense of insecurity stems from the growing inability of these states to fulfill their responsibilities towards the public. In Pakistan, the Imran Khan-led government has signed one of the most imposed punishing deal with the IMF, resulting in unprecedented austerity. The education budget has been cut by 40% and the health sector is being privatized. Meanwhile, wheat shortage have made the food market and inflation has reached an unprecedented 14%. In India, the economy has also taken a sharp downturn. The economic growth has tumbled from an annual expansion rate of 8.1% in the first quarter of 2018 to just 4.5% in the third quarter of last year. Rising unemployment coupled with an agrarian crisis left many poor families with no other option but to cut back their food consumption, shattering Prime Minister Narendra Modi's promise of delivering Achhe Din, good days for the country's impoverished majority. Moreover, the growing economic uncertainty has accelerated the need of the region's ruling classes to produce fake enemies to distract the public from their persistent inability to provide them with a decent standard of living. This is why an unprecedented number of people across the political spectrum in Pakistan are facing the accusation of being an Indian agent, while in India, opponents of the government are being branded ISI agents in reference to Pakistan's intelligence agency, and this is why so many people are facing charges for allegedly serving the enemy in both countries today. Yet there is growing resistance in both India and Pakistan against the authoritarianism engulfing the region. Two features stand out as salient in these burgeoning movements. First, they are being led by young citizens who are increasingly wary of the fear and hate-mongering methods that are being used by ruling elites to convince the public to give up their most basic rights to safety, employment and free speech. Thousands of students, for example, joined the campaign in India against the discriminatory CAA, posing perhaps of the greatest challenge to Modi government in India. Similarly, in Pakistan, students' solidarity march and the PTM emerged as youth-led movements and managed to unite the public behind a common cause at a time when mainstream political parties appear unable to build an opposition to faltering political and economic system. The second striking feature of these movements is that they base their legitimacy on the constitution. In India, the anti-CAA protesters are claimed that such discriminatory laws undermine the basic architecture of the constitution and facilitate India's drift towards communal majoritarianism. In Pakistan, activists are defending freedom of speech and unionism as basic elements of the constitution, without which democracy becomes meaningless. In both cases, the state has responded by hurling allegations of treason and imposing sedition charges on the protesters. This led to a bizarre situation where the state's foremost legal document is transformed into subversive literature, signifying the crisis of legitimacy that haunts authoritarian governments in South Asia. Activists in both India and Pakistan have recently become more vocal in their demand for the repeal of sedition law. Indeed, they are asking the pertinent question: who are people being sedition against if they themselves are the rulers? An honest resolution of this question will not only allow the subcontinent to overcome one of the darkest legacies of the colonial law, but it will also aid us in figuring out what it means to be a patriotic in a region where nationalism is becoming increasingly insular and punishing.